Pelican Brewing presents The Daily Ticker, where Dirt and Sprague visit with the insiders that are covering the stories you've heard about, and some you haven't.
How'd you do that? Actually, I'm not even mad. It's amazing.
The Daily Ticker with Dirt and Sprague is poured by Pelican Brewing. Be ready for your next afternoon vacation with Beak Breaker Tropical. Pelican Brewing, born at the beach.
It's never too early to think about drinking a cold beer. Daily Ticker brought to you by Pelican Brewing. Visit pelicanbrewing.com for more details on locations, events, and award-winning beers independently brewed since 1996. Pelican Brewing, born at the beach. Great to have them back. Great to talk some NBA with a good friend of the program, and there's a lot to get to. The NBA playoffs are entertaining. I have Blazer questions because we were just having a conversation about the Blazers. We got a lot to unpack. Justin Termine at Termine Radio, SiriusXM, NBA channel 86 is where you can find him. Talking NBA's live on the YouTube as well. So thanks for doing that for us, Justin. We appreciate it, man. I'm going to start with a Blazer question. I apologize. We were literally just talking about them before bringing you on. Just about what they're doing in the backcourt and the logjam that exists and what the pathway is with Scoot, Shaden, Anthony Simons, Malcolm Brogdon is still technically here. Just what do you make of the roster construction and the biggest needs to address in terms of balancing things out this summer for them?
Yeah, I mean, you seem to have, your future set at the guard positions. Now you got to filter through, like, which guys should stay, which guys should go. And I guess with Ayton, he does get accused of putting up some empty numbers, but he did put up some big numbers towards the tail end of the season, and it's way too early to give up on him. And I'm of the belief that, the point guard and the big guy, especially with the league kind of shifting back towards the bigs, with the Jokic's, the Giannis's, the Embiid's, like you need one Anthony Davis, like you need a big to compete. So maybe the two most important positions are taken care of, and now it's filling in at the wing positions, right? And having some of those lanky wings, and that's something that you guys almost always had a problem with, even when you had a team that was more competitive with CJ and Lillard. It's like you didn't have the guys on the wings that could take over a game or maybe even guard those positions come postseason time when you run into a Paul George or a Kawhi or a LeBron or a Tatum, a Jaylen Brown, a Jimmy Butler. So I think that's the area maybe that needs to be focused on next year for the Blazers.
Justin, is there any level of coffee to get Knicks fans through their day today? Because I can only imagine how devastating the city of New York is still feeling after Tyrese Maxey just ripped their heart out to force a Game 6.
Yeah, I mean, the game looked like it was over. The series looked like it was over. And, it's one of those things like you go back to, I guess, Ray Allen. Now, that was at the NBA Finals where you're sitting up there. You're pretty confident if you're a San Antonio fan at that point. Last night, as a Knicks fan, I think you're thinking, all right, well, bring on the Pacers, maybe the Bucks, but bring on the Pacers. And then maybe even getting a little bit further ahead of themselves. They're like, well, Kristaps Porzingis now is hurt for Boston. There's an avenue to get to an NBA Finals. Then you have something like that happen. Now you have to go on the road where you're facing Philadelphia on their home floor. You didn't take advantage of a historically bad Embiid game, and you still ended up losing. And then you get into a situation where you're pressured in Game 7. Whoa, a 3-1 series lead. So, yeah, I mean, you really that was gut-wrenching last night for the Knicks. And, again, they won a game like that earlier in the series in Game 2, and now they lose one, so it almost evens out.
Yeah, you go to the other game last night, too, that a lot of people just kind of assumed was going to be an outcome that didn't end up happening, and that was Indiana and Milwaukee, where it just like no Giannis, no Dame. Like Milwaukee didn't have a chance in hell at winning this game. Indiana's going to probably cruise to a victory. Not only did they not win, they got blown out. That's one of the more embarrassing performances I've seen. Are you to the point where now you're thinking, hey, maybe Giannis comes back for Game 6, this could get interesting, or the injuries still too much for Milwaukee?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I don't know enough about the injuries. I think long-term, like, all right, maybe Giannis comes back, but this Lillard thing seems like it's really dicey. So maybe they get out of the series. It's not like they're facing, the 96 Bulls here with the Pacers. I mean, the Pacers got some issues of their own, right? And Halliburton hasn't looked the same, even though he hit a big shot a couple of days ago in that amazing game on Friday night where they won in overtime. But it's not like the Pacers are unbeatable. I guess what would really get me if I was a Bucks fan, like the annoying part would be, I think the big question was heading into the postseason, what version of Chris Middleton are we going to get? And Middleton's been fantastic. So you thought Damian Lillard was a given. You thought Giannis was a given, but it was going to fluctuate based off Middleton. If you knew you were going to get this version of Chris Middleton, and then you teamed it with a healthy Giannis and Damian Lillard, like you're seeing an avenue, especially now with the injury to Porzingis. You get to the NBA Finals, and anything could happen. So I think you're really depressed if you're a Bucks fan, knowing that Middleton has been this good, but ultimately it's probably not going to matter.
And Justin, you had a great tweet yesterday. I thought it was fantastic, and I'm glad you kind of went viral with it and got a lot lot of traction on it. You said Suns gone, Lakers gone, enjoying a postseason featuring intelligently built, homegrown teams having success, while the player-constructed super teams filled with big names looking to team up and take the easy way out are failing. Tremendous. And I think that was a takeaway I've certainly had, is seeing how you can properly build things. OKC's going to play 4 games in 23 days with their organically built. Yes, they traded for SGA team. That's working out rather well. Minnesota, we're just seeing it all over the place. I agree with it wholeheartedly. Who is your favorite constructed team in this run, though? Because mine's Minnesota. I have fallen in love with the Timberwolves. The Nuggets are great. They may win that series. They've got the best player. But my God, Anthony Edwards looking like baby Jordan, and the Timberwolves being what they are after that Gobert trade. Cat, filling in what his role is instead of being the number one. Who's your favorite organically built team?
I think it might be the two that you just mentioned, and the funny thing is, the same guy built them both, right? And Tim Conley, he was in Denver, he built that organization, and he did it with shrewd trades, they draft Jokic, and nobody saw that coming, but then they're able to add a guy like Aaron Gordon, who was valuable, I think, out there on the market, but nobody knew he was going to be this, but he was a perfectly fit in piece, right? And that's the same thing that he's done in Minnesota, where, like, all the pieces fit in perfectly. So I give him a ton of credit for doing that in 2 cold weather, small markets. That's not easy. Like, anybody can put together a winner in Miami. Anybody can put together a winner with the Lakers, where you can run the front office incompetently, but LeBron's going to say, I want to play in L.A. Anthony Davis is going to say, I want to play in L.A. Takes an intelligent basketball mind to build a winner in Denver. Same thing with Minnesota. This guy's done it in both places, so I think that's pretty darn impressive. And just from a basketball perspective, like enjoyment of watching, I think my 2 favorite players to watch in the league might be in this series, in Nikola Jokic and Anthony Edwards. And the fascinating part about it is they do it in 2 completely different ways. One is a super athletic guy. The other guy kind of beats you with his mind, and we get to see the contrast in styles here over what I think is going to be at least 6 or 7 games.
Justin Termine is our guest at Termine Radio on Twitter. Go give him a follow. SiriusXM channel 86, 1 to 4 p.m. Pacific time every day, talking NBA basketball. On the flip side of that, are the super teams who are now facing kind of a nut crunch of, like, where do we go? I know the Clippers are still alive, but I'll throw them into this just in case they do lose. Just like if you put them and Phoenix in a category of, like, which fan base should be more concerned, who has the harder job unpacking the roster construction that they put together with bloated contracts and unhealthy superstars?
Yeah, I would say that Phoenix has a more difficult time because at least the only commitment that the Clippers have, like, amongst their big 3 is Kawhi Leonard. Now, maybe that was the wrong guy to sign. Probably should have been Paul George, even though Paul George I don't think is as talented as Kawhi. He's certainly healthier than Kawhi. And plus, they've got the wealthiest owner in the sport by far. Whereas you look at Phoenix, they've got all this money committed to Kevin Durant. All this money committed to Booker. The Booker contract's actually good, but then the Bradley Beal contract, I think you'd make an argument, is the worst contract in the sport. They have no maneuverability. They don't have any picks. They can't add money via a trade. So I think they're a real disaster. And what they have to fear now, and you've heard this from some outlets, is Devin Booker going like, well, what's the end result of this? I mean, the guy, and then demanding a trade. I find it funny that they're going to fire Frank Vogel, who I think is a very good head coach. Okay, so a team doesn't even win 1 game in the postseason. You fire Frank Vogel. You could bring in Eric Spoelstra. You could bring in Red Auerbach, Phil Jackson. They're not going to, maybe they win a couple of more games than Frank Vogel. They're not taking you from getting swept in the first round to winning an NBA championship, especially when they're getting older at this point.
Luka seems like he's more injured than he's letting on. I know he's saying it's achy, but he seems a little different than the Luka we've come to know and love. Who are you picking in Clippers Mavs to win that series? I thought it was the Mavs going in. Luka's been banged up. Harden was awesome in that last game. Who are you going with to settle that series between those 2?
Yeah, it's funny because I think you make an argument that Luka has been the worst of the 4 main guys that have been playing, meaning him, Kyrie, James Harden, and Paul George, when he's clearly the most talented of that group, but I think he's a little bit banged up. Shots not falling. I'm still going to go with Dallas. I think they're the better team. Even the games that they've lost, they've just got off to a really slow start for some reason, haven't been prepared, and then the second half they've stormed back, so maybe they get a little bit of the momentum there. So I'm still going to go with Dallas. That was my pick at the beginning. But in regards to like their long-term run, which I thought could get pretty deep, maybe I wouldn't favor them against Oklahoma City in the next round, whereas prior to the postseason, I would have given them the nod.
Great. Great stuff, Justin Termine, SiriusXM Radio. Go give him a follow on Twitter, at Termine Radio. Kind enough to join us not only on the phone, but also on the YouTube, so all of our audience can get a look at him. We appreciate that, even though I know it's kind of awkward because we can't actually see you and we're not looking at each other, but our audience appreciates it.
I'm looking at the camera, so it looks like I'm looking
kind of looking at each other. They appreciate it. Wonderful.
I'm not sure you should be thanking me for joining visually because, I was watching that game last night.
The
and
hair
I was,
looks good.
I was going nuts, all stressed out, so I didn't even dress up. I apologize for not dressing up.
No, it's perfect, man.
Par for the course on this show.
I'm sure that's how most of our audience looks. It's 7:42 or 7:45 here on the West Coast, and everybody's just getting up out of bed. Go 1 to 4 p.m. SiriusXM Channel 86. We always enjoy the time, man. Thanks for the breakdown, and let's do this again soon.
All right, thanks for having me on, fellas.
There you go. Great stuff. Justin Termine. His hair looked fantastic. It was delightful.
His tweet yesterday was spot on. It
was, man.
And look, some of these teams have made little trades or big trades, but largely organically built with filling in the proper pieces at holes that you just couldn't address in the draft.
You asked something yesterday, and I want to get to it next, because there's always, we don't discuss show stuff very often, and then you go in, and I'm like, I'm not quite sure where he's going to go with this. And then you pose a question to me, and I'm like, in the moment, I didn't think of what I wanted to say.
Choke.
And I'm driving home, and I'm like, dude, I thought bubble. Now I want to do the segment again. I want to do that segment again.